Compared to 150 years ago, life is much better. Child mortality is down from 25% to virtually zero. Average incomes have increased 1,000%, from $3,000 a year to $30,000 a year. Life expectancy has more than doubled from 39 to 81. The average amount of schooling has increased from 10 months to 12 years. Literacy rates have increased from 50% to 99%. When you put it all together, life has been utterly transformed. True, we have NHS waiting lists, but we take it for granted that 50% of children will no longer die in the first 5 years of life. Real wages have stagnated in recent years, but the idea of sending malnourished children up a chimney or down a mine is like a bad dream of a Charles Dickens novel. But the really interesting question is, what about the next 150 years? Will things keep getting better, or have we reached peak civilization, and will things start to get worse? The idea of constant progress is actually relatively new. For 500 years, living standards virtually stagnated. Between 1200 and 1700, the only major increase in real wages occurred a few years after the Black Death, which killed roughly half the population. The shortage of workers meant that they got a 33% wage rise for those who survived. It led Thomas Malthus to propose the idea that we were basically doomed. Any increase in the population would just lower living standards, as the food supply would not be able to keep up. It was a zero-sum world, where helping the poor was seen as a waste of time. Better to let them die. No wonder economics got the label the dismal science. Fortunately, Malthus was wrong. Not just a little wrong, but totally wrong. The technological improvements of the Industrial Revolution saw the population explode, but so did living standards. The main story of the past 150 years is that life is getting better. You can't deny that even the worst living conditions in the UK are much better than the Victorian slums of the 1850s. So what about the future? Well, looking forward, one interesting factor is the forecasts for population. Birth rates are plummeting, exceeding even the most pessimistic forecasts. Life may be better than 150 years ago, but we aren't so keen to bring new children into this world. In the Victorian age, children would go out and work for you. Today, children are expensive. Bringing up one child is an estimated £200,000. No wonder people are thinking of having smaller families. Housing costs have been rising faster than inflation, meaning that couples are struggling to buy even small houses, let alone multi-bedroomed houses. But this fall in fertility rates will change society, and how would living standards be affected by a smaller population? Well, on the positive side, fewer people would mean much less pressure on housing costs. House prices and rents would probably start to go down, and this would effectively lead to a big increase in living standards. And this is a tragedy of the current situation. Wages are relatively high, but also so are many living costs. A smaller population, in theory, would enable cheaper housing. It would also tackle some of the problems of modern life: congestion, overcrowding and pollution. Let's be honest, we'd all like to enjoy the Lake District with fewer people and without a 2-hour tailback going up the M6. With a smaller population, many things do get easier. But the problem is that getting to this smaller population will take a long time. Next 50 years, we won't have a falling population, just an ageing population. And this ageing population gives everybody a headache. It will lead to higher government spending on health and pensions and lower tax revenue. Fewer young workers and young people to support an ageing population, who are living longer but often with serious health conditions. Who is going to look after old people with dementia? Will it be artificially intelligent robots? The government's projections for tax and spending are pretty grim. It will lead to difficult trade-offs, the opposite of the post-war period, where strong growth and a young population enable better trade-offs and better living standards. However, a smaller population is not without its drawback. One reason for improved living standards is a huge rise in technology and economies of scale of modern industry. When the population does start to shrink, some of these benefits will start to fall too. The thing that really boosted living standards in the past 150 years was technology. The steam engine, electricity, new farming techniques and the combustion engine were all the kinds of things which helped improve life. And don't forget the humble inventions like the washing machine, vacuum cleaners, refrigerators, which have saved hours of unpaid work, enabling women to go out and work or enjoy more leisure time. The big question is, will technology continue its remorseless trend of continual progress? Well, the good news is that technological improvements for things like battery, solar power and renewables has constantly exceeded many people's predictions. We think we have reduced costs as much as we can, but they keep getting cheaper. Solar capacity has been on a consistent trend of doubling every 2.2 years, nearly always exceeding pessimistic forecasts. Renewables are growing faster than fossil fuels ever did. Though if you are of a more pessimistic bent, you may look at also the forecasts of peak coal not being achieved. China keeps producing more coal than many people forecast, partly to make cheap electricity to produce solar panels and renewables like that. But in the long term, the way that costs are falling and battery technology is improving, it has the capacity to lead to very cheap, clean energy within our lifetime. In 50 years, countries will not be dependent on oil imports. They will have energy independence. Africa is the one place where the population is forecast to grow in the next 100 years, but it will be powering itself by solar power. No complicated geopolitical actions to get oil. Imagine your household budget, but you have to spend very little on heating, fuel and light. That's a big improvement in living standards just around the corner. There will always be new technology which comes out of the blue, new ways of making battery, crystal technology, quantum computing. The only certainty of human forecasting is that we tend to assume we've reached peak technology, but yet things far exceed our limited perspective. Just 121 years ago, Orville Wright powered the first air flight. Today we have flights to Mars, satellites in deep space, and you can fly from London to Gran Canaria on Ryanair for just £15 one way. Who said we aren't living the good life? Where we'll be going in 50 or 100 years' time? The sky is the limit, literally. But whilst technology has a massive benefit in terms of raising living standards, increasing productivity and increasing GDP, recent technological trends also have a darker side that may prove very damaging for improving happiness and the things that really matter, not GDP, but are we satisfied and at peace with ourselves? The smartphone emerged from nowhere in 2007 to becoming a ubiquitous presence in the lives of just about everybody. Children and adults are addicted. It has taken over many people's lives, affecting mental health and rewiring our brains. Numerous studies show that the constant pressure of notifications and living several hours a day online, causing a rise in anxiety and depression and insecurity. Drug addicts say the addiction to a phone is a similar experience. The innocence of childhood has been lost, with a quarter of 11-year-olds exposed to pornography and children aged 11 to 14 spending on average 9 hours a day on a screen, with many spending even much longer. The shift in the way of living is a giant social experiment, but is it a world which gives real happiness? Just watch a documentary like Swiped on Channel 4 to see how phones have changed people's lives. When phones are taken away, children report better sleep, reduced depression, all within a few weeks. But do we have the self-regulation to deal with this new phenomenon? It's not just about phones. What will the artificial intelligence boom lead to? Will society be controlled by a few Silicon Valley billionaires like Elon Musk? Will AI take over the creative industries, leaving us scrabbling for crumbs from the table of big tech multinationals like Apple, Google and Tesla? Now, we've been worrying about technology taking jobs ever since the Luddites went around smashing up machines in the 19th century. Now, fears that technology would lead to mass unemployment have been largely misplaced. I mean, often there's difficulties in that transition, but unemployment has not really materialised. So there's no likelihood that the next 200 years is going to be any different. But there will be big changes in the labour market, a big change in the type of jobs that we do. In an ideal world, technology will do the boring, mundane jobs which are very repetitive, leaving us with a more worthwhile and rewarding jobs like being a doctor or looking after people. Now, interestingly, in 1930, John Maynard Keynes made a prediction that by 2030, the average working week would be just 15 hours a week. His logic was that productivity would continue to increase, enabling people to work less. Now, he was right about one thing: productivity has definitely increased. However, he was wrong about the idea we would work less. We work pretty much the same, about 40 hours a week. The reason is maybe we want to spend more, there's more goods to buy now. We want to save for retirement. We have to spend more on assets like buying a house or something like that. Or maybe a firm doesn't allow people to work less. So what about the future? Will be people working a 3-day week or something like that? Well, maybe part of the reason is that we need some kind of worthwhile work to give us a sense of worth and achievement. So I'm not convinced that most people will be doing a 15-hour week in 100 years' time. Now, one of the biggest boons of the past 150 years is rising life expectancy. But increasingly, we face a new set of health challenges. Across the globe, there's been a rise in the number of young people on disability benefits, unable to work properly. Healthy life expectancy has fallen in recent years, with a growing divide between low-income and high-income people. Now, vaccines and better hygiene solved many of the mass killers like cholera, polio, measles and tetanus. But at the same time, in recent decades, we've seen a worrying rise in new conditions: dementia, Parkinson's, cancer, autoimmune diseases have all been rising in recent decades, and many of these don't have a proper cure. In the US, life expectancy started to fall for the first time since the Civil War. Why is this? Well, the industrial age has caused an unprecedented rise in pollution and toxic materials in the atmosphere, in the water, in the soil, in the food that we eat. DDT and mercury may have been banned, but they are still in the ecosystem. At the moment, forever chemicals continue to be added to the environment. Intensive farming has led to a deterioration of soil quality. In the UK, arable land has seen a 40 to 60% fall in organic carbon. There's a real danger that the soil could become worthless in 100 years' time. In other parts of the world, climate change, urbanisation and population growth are all causing a variety of environmental stresses: increased desertification, a loss of drinking water. Global warming is already causing an increase in severe weather events. Rising temperatures could cause even more costs to other parts of the globe. Yet at the same time, it's not all doom and gloom on the environment. The Great Green Wall in the Saharan region is an effort to stop the desertification of the Sahara. Millions of trees have been planted, and there's been some modest success there. So is life going to get better or worse? Well, I do tend to be an optimist. I think that the benefits will ultimately outweigh the costs. But I think it'll be much more of what you make of it. Will you be able to make technology work for you, rather than being a slave to your phone? Will you be able to choose a healthy lifestyle rather than getting sucked into the very unhealthy food big companies want us to buy? Life is definitely much better than 150 years ago. But I'm not convinced we'll see such a big change because all the easy gains have been made And in all that progress we've made has also come at some costs such as higher pollution, increased stress, increased anxiety. Another interesting question is, were things better just 30 or 40 or 50 years ago? Were the 60s and 70s the best time to be alive? Were things really much better in the swinging 60s? This video looks at how things have changed in the past 40 years, and you can decide whether your parents were better off than you.